Hi everyone. So you might have already read the title that says Science Makes Me Feel Stupid. I think this is really interesting in how it is phrased because we all have often felt at some point that science makes us feel stupid. And the reason I'm making this video is because I was fascinated by this mentality, this thinking that I discovered after reading this one article in one of my biotechnology classes here. And the article was titled as The Importance of Stupidity in Scientific Research. After reading that title of that article, I was kind of confused about how stupidity is essential for scientific research. I mean, among everything else, how is stupidity in particular significant to the research of science? That doesn't really make any sense. But then after I read the article, I got to understand what the author really meant. So this article is written by Martin A. Shwartz, who's a cell microbiologist and affiliated with the Yale University, and he wrote this article titled as The Importance of Stupidity in Scientific Research. So in this video, I'll be just briefly summarizing whatever I learned in that article, what it said, and what lessons I gained. Also, like some of the key points of that. So in the start of the article, the author, Mr. Shwartz, talks about how he met his friend who studied at a grad school in the field of science, was doing her PhD at the same time as he was, but at a different place. And then after meeting with her after several years, he found out how she had quit her grad school and went into the Harvard Law School and became a senior lawyer. After questioning her why she did that, her answer was because science made her feel stupid. So that's what caught his attention, and he started to contemplate this matter. And eventually, sometime the next day, he got this conclusion that yes, science made him feel stupid too. In fact, he was so used to feeling this feeling of stupidity that he was actively seeking out new opportunities to make himself feel even more stupid. And then he talks about how stupidity is essential in science. And this article is mostly referring to fixed mindset and growth mindset, although these two words were never mentioned in this article, but that's the entire summary of it. What is growth mindset and what is a fixed mindset, and how stupidity exists in our nature either way, but it is up to us how we encounter that entire stupidity matter, because stupidity is a challenge that we need to overcome in some ways, but how we do that is essential. Either a person can have a fixed mindset and just don't care, just stop where they are once they feel stupid, and then there's a person with a growth mindset who would actually feel comfortable with feeling stupid and take measures to actually overcome his problem rather than just being uncomfortable with not knowing something. So that's like the conclusion of the article about how a growth mindset can help a person grow and not a fixed mindset. So starting off with how a person can develop this fixed mindset. And in this article, two of the main reasons that were addressed were, number one, it's because of the schools, and number two, it's because of the colleges. So many science students in their school and in their college, they feel this sense of motivation to go forward and do better because of their grades and how they take certain courses, and they do well in those courses. So and that's a really normal way to think about it. If I'm a student, I'm going to school, I take certain science courses, I do good on the exam, I ace them, I have this feeling that yeah, I'm smart, I'm not stupid, and I'm feeling motivated. That's exactly one of the problems with when these students reach to PhD levels and they confront this absolute like ignorance, and they're like, what now? Because they are not used to this. They're not used to not knowing anything. Have already they already have this mindset that they know everything. But once they reach this higher level of, like, maybe in their PhD or something, they don't know everything, and that's what messes them up. And that's exactly what happened with his friend who had to quit. So see, that's the entire dilemma of it all. Now the author talks about how he himself challenged this problem for a very long time, and when he was in his PhD, he had these questions, which I would quote exactly what he said. How could I possibly frame the questions that would lead to significant discoveries? Design and interpret an experiment so that the conclusions were absolutely convincing. How can I foresee difficulties and see my way around them, or failing that solving them when they occurred? So he talks about his PhD project, and it was a somewhat interdisciplinary problem, and it required the understanding of many different kinds of fields. So what he did was that if he had any kind of a problem in his project, he would go to a certain department and ask for help. Ask help from different people how he can actually solve that particular problem. He did that for a long period of time. And then one person that he went to was Henry Taube, who is a Canadian-born American chemist, and he mainly works in the mechanisms of electron transfer reactions, especially in metal complexes. But that person, who eventually also got a Nobel Prize for all of his work, at that particular time when Mr. Shwartz went to him and asked for his help in the problem that he was facing, Henry Taube was like, I can't help you. I don't know what the answer is. So and he knew how smart he was. Mr. Shwartz was well aware that if Henry Taube cannot answer my question, how can I do that? So that's where the fixed mindset thing came. Because this is impossible. I can't do it. It's just not in my hands anymore. If a person this smart cannot do it, how can I do that? But then, after understanding that it was a research project, nobody knew what the answer was. Neither did Henry Taube, nor he, nor anybody else. That's exactly why it was called a research project. When he understood that nobody knows. It's just he who can, if he puts all his effort in and he just tries and tries and tries, maybe he can eventually figure out what the answer is. That was a turning point for him. Nobody knew. Only he knew, right? So after understanding and having this realization that it was a research project and nobody else knew but him, but he can actually try for that, he figured out the answer to his problem in a couple of days. That's exactly why it was called a research project. So soon after he solved the problem, and this also shows how whatever we feed into our mind is what we actually are capable of. So that realization, and he says that realization, instead of being discouraging, was actually liberating for him. If our ignorance is infinite, the only possible course of action is just muddle through it. It's almost like there's a you when you are in your college and you're in your school, you know the material, right? You've been provided with the material. You know there's knowledge out there, so you just gain it. The only work that you have to do is understand the concepts that have already been discovered. So you go through those steps, and then when you go and go and go, there's a level that you reach, and that's where you are responsible for making further discoveries. That's where you have to put in everything that it requires to discover something that has never been discovered before. There's a huge difference between that, being in school, being in college, and being at this level where you have to just figure things out that nobody else ever know of. So it's almost like an open space, it's infinite. It's full of ignorance and it's full of knowledge. You just have to go and just dive right into it. And if you're uncomfortable doing that, that's what's called a fixed mindset. You're not ready to challenge, you're not ready to fail, you're not ready to just be wrong. And growth mindset, opposing to that, it's when you're like, oh well, darn it, I don't know what this is. I am stupid and I know it. And the only way to figure out this problem is to actually accept that I don't know it. Just go and try. Just try, right? And also in this article, Mr. Shwartz talks about how talks about two ways how the situation is made even worse by the PhD programs themselves. And number one is that these PhD programs don't tell you, the students, how hard it is to do research, especially how hard it is to do important research. It's hard, it's unknown, it's challenging, it's competitive, and and not even the constantly changing departmental, institutional, and national policies can help with that. It's just hard, and the PhD programs need to tell their students that it's hard. It's not easy at all. And number two, these PhD programs fail to teach their students how to be productively stupid, and that's where all of it comes in. Mr. Shwartz talks about being productively stupid. Now, what does that mean? And he explains it. So he says productive stupidity is not relative stupidity. It's not the stupidity that a bright person in your class can read the same material as you do and then they can just ace the exam, while you just can't, right? And it's actually the absolute stupidity that matters. He says that it's an inherent, almost like an inherent quality that a person gets that pushes that person to go forward and look for answers. Productive stupidity means to be ignorant by choice. It means to make ourselves comfortable with being wrong. It means to get it wrong. That's what absolute stupidity is, and that absolute stupidity is really essential for scientific research. It's almost this inherent quality that a human being possesses. Let's suppose you go out in the woods, right? Let's suppose you are one of those people in the Stone Age. You go out in the woods, you're curious. How can I make a living condition for myself? So you don't know yet how everything works, but you figure it out because of your curiosity, because you don't know nothing, you figure it out and you start doing it. That's productive and that's productive stupidity. Your stupidity is actually your ignorance that you have by nature, but it does not stop you. It pushes you forward to do something, to do and find innovative things and ideas. So now this absolute stupidity, this productive stupidity, it's what is essential for scientific research. And so at the end, we can get something that is right. And the author also talks about how it is really very important for the PhD programs to let the students know and how hard it is to make this transition from being able to move on from what other people had discovered previously to discover stuff ourselves. And this can be done at a much more easier level if we allow ourselves to be productively stupid, if we accept that yes, I am stupid, it's okay if I don't know something, and it's totally fine. Because that's how things are, that's a fact. Productive stupidity is a fact, It's an existential fact. You cannot deny it. It exists. It's in us, and that's exactly what pushes us forward, right? And the more comfortable we become with being stupid, the more deeper we want to actually muddle through the unknown and make big discoveries and own that those failures that we get through our way. And once we are comfortable enough to go and dive deep down into the unknown, that's exactly when we're going to find new things. That's exactly when we are going to make discoveries that were not made before. So not only is it only about finding knowledge out there, but it's also about how our mind works. It's also about how we make ourselves think stuff is going to happen. It's all in here. You stop yourself from up here, you can't do it. But if you tell yourself that it's okay not to know not anything, that's when you accept it. And that should not make you be discouraged. It should actually liberate you towards further progress. And that was a summary of it all. That's what I gained from that, and that's what many students around the world should know. And not that I'm saying that I've understood it entirely and I'll never get discouraged in any way. I used to, when I am currently, and I might in the future also get discouraged if I don't know a particular answer to something. Because that's exactly what human nature is, to not know. And that, that absolute stupidity is one day going to make me a better person. So it's only knowing that it's okay to fail, it's okay to fall down, it's okay to not know. Because nobody does. Nobody knows everything, right? That's the entire summary of that. So it's just this, what this article did was it made me think about how I can address these problems in a different way. How I can at least in some way alter my mindset so that I can easily approach a problem. It doesn't really have to be a scientific problem, but any problem in my life, right? Any problem in anybody's life. You should always have that open mindset, and that's what's going to help you. Thank you.